Yo, what's up guys? Imagine spending your entire life with your beloved until your old age. You have a wonderful family and even grandchildren, but you feel bad having spent your entire life working, wishing you could have given your spouse more. Then one day, you and your other half eat a golden fruit that gives you both your youth back. Now, you spend your days full of energy, and every day with your beloved is a new adventure. This is the fun and wacky story of Grandpa and Grandma turn young again. So let's get started and watch the story unfold.
Say, Grandma, is there anything you would want to do if you turned young again? We were poor as a young couple and couldn't even get us a honeymoon trip, said Shouzou Saitou, apologizing to his wife, Ine. But she was fine, knowing just being able to talk to him nonchalantly like this was more than enough for her. The elderly couple headed towards an important apple tree, one they had planted together after they had gotten married to celebrate their wedding now 60 years ago. It had even split once during Typhoon Mirai. They had thought it was done for, but it miraculously survived. But more astonishing on this day was the appearance of a golden apple. Later that night, Shouzou reflected on how they were so poor and busy, yet the woman he loved still remained by his side. He thought things like, I'm sure she must have a lot she wanted to do. She must have still wanted to wear her favorite clothes and go into town. But seeing his teary face in the mirror young yet again, he screamed out for his wife. Running into their room, he found his lovely woman the same way. The two blushed as he set her down the bed and told her, "We're going on a honeymoon trip." During another evening, their granddaughter Mino came to visit, only to be flabbergasted meeting her youthful grandparents, losing her mind a little. She accepted things pretty quickly, telling her grandfather not to cut his hair as he looks good with it, even though his bangs kind of get in the way. On the way home, Mino mentions to her father giddily about her youthful grandparents, but of course he has no idea what she means. During a game of cricket, two elderly men discuss how they've missed seeing Shouzou and Ine lately, with those two known as the lucky lovebirds. However, we hear elderly ladies scream at the handsome young Shouzou as he sizes up the ball. We turn back a few days prior, where Shouzou and his son Yoshiaki were arguing. Yoshiaki wanted his parents to move in with them, as the parents were getting older and more prone to injury. However, Shouzou refused to budge, knowing their ancestors protected this land for hundreds of years. He understood where his son was coming from, but he wouldn't abandon this legacy. Ine apologized to her daughter-in-law Kaede for having to hear their husbands argue while they did the dishes. But Grandma Ine felt perfectly fine, as long as she could stay by her husband's side. Back to the present, Kaede came over to bring ingredients Ine had asked for, only to be met with her father-in-law, kindly mentioning Ine is at a community center meeting right now, and now totally confused with this being the first time she's seeing Shouzou young. Oh my god, she left the room because she wasn't expecting her father-in-law to be so handsome? This is getting a little spicy. Spicy enough that Ine has bad feelings all the way at the community center. Later, Yoshiaki had a bit of a headache, trying to comprehend the magic that had occurred to his parents. Now he knew what his daughter Mino meant when she said she was playing boyfriend and girlfriend with Grandpa. She nervously explained to her father, I mean, unlike you, he's so kind. He got the vibe. It was truly heaven on earth, so... Mino then explained her secret technique, Grandpa Barrier, to which Shouzou lovingly tells her she's getting too clingy. But Kaede scolds her, saying granddaughter ex-grandpa is forbidden even in fiction. With Yoshiaki's wife and daughter kind of fighting over Shouzou, Ine tells him they need to talk later, with a slap. As they say their goodbyes for the evening, Ine pats her son's head, wondering if he's working too hard at work these days, which takes him back to his childhood, getting praised by his mother. At a meeting for the Intertown Sports Festival, Southtown meets, worried they'll lose the event. But upon seeing the absolutely jacked Shouzou, they begin their praises of him, knowing he can lead them to victory. On the day of the festival, Northtown comes over to intimidate Southtown, knowing all the members from Southtown could barely participate with all their members above the age of 50. Northtown was counting their victory on Shota Igarashi, a second year in high school who's part of the soccer club, and Daiki, a high school third year and captain of the baseball team. However, with the arrival of the Saitou couple, things got serious. During the first match, even with Shouzou's help, Northtown was on the verge of losing. However, with Ine giving a cheer to her husband with pom-poms, he miraculously got amped and took a victory for Southtown, even if Ine got a little embarrassed. The next event is a three-legged baton race with the Igarashi brothers taking the lead. As they've been playing sports together for over 10 years, the two know each other's quirks more than anyone. Unfortunately for them, the moment the Saitou couple gets the baton, having been together now for 70 years, Shouzou can adjust his running perfectly to match his wife, and the two claim an easy victory. No matter what the event, the Saitou couple crushes it and Southtown wins by a landslide. With Northtown losing, Grandpa Igarashi isn't so happy about the embarrassment his sons faced. He's spiteful that Shouzou stole Ine from him 70 years ago, and now he stole his grandson's smiles. But then, Ine pays them a visit. She can't be around her husband right now since he's getting so much praise from his victory. He's surrounded. So, she decided to share lunch with the Igarashis. As they enjoyed lunch, Grandpa Igarashi noted his wife, who passed away 3 years ago, as self-centered for leaving their cute grandsons behind. Ine then remarks, looking at the two boys, it reminded her of him when he was young, and that time he'd confessed his feelings to her, which surprised the boys, now knowing why their grandfather was always picking a fight with Southtown. On another day, Grandpa Igarashi sent Shota to deliver something as thanks for the meal, but with Mino answering the door, the boy was completely flustered, handing over the bag. Inviting him inside, Shota sat completely unable to talk, with tea in hand. He had no idea Mino was related to that Saitou couple. He knows Mino is super popular at school, and even though he's always had trouble communicating, she's always been cheerful with him. He's stun-locked being alone with a person all of their peers admire. He tries to get through this by fiddling with his phone, but it fails since she gets interested in what he's playing. Unbeknownst to them, Mino's mom and grandma had been spying, and Kaede is wondering what to do if her daughter gets a boyfriend and eventually married. However, Shouzou is excited to have great grandchildren. Conversing with Shouzou, Shota finds him very kind, but somehow feels an immense pressure from Ine and Kaede. With the adults wanting to learn more about Shota, Mino praises him for being smart and good at sports. However, this only leads to Ine and Kaede nervously whispering, judging on whether or not he'd be a good match for Mino. Shouzou tries to ask Shota if there's a girl he likes, only to get quickly stopped by his wife, who makes an excuse that there was a mosquito on his face. Shota then says his goodbyes for the evening, and as Mino walks back in the living room with her grandfather, she's a little saddened because she wanted to talk with Shota alone a little more, making Shouzou nervous because now it's a secret only he knows. On another day, Mino is surprised to hear her grandmother was the one who confessed to Shouzou first. They married for love, which was rare back then. Shouzou then said he always yearned for Ine, and told her he was overjoyed, but the times just wouldn't allow it. His father was a man of tradition. He intended Shouzou to have an arranged marriage with the daughter of his good friend, because back then, the family a person was born into influenced a lot of things. At first, Shouzou didn't do anything, until he had a huge fist fight with his father. For a while, he thought of eloping, but with Ine's support, they managed to overcome everything. Shouzou remembered his wife to be so cool back then. She even called out the girl that his father introduced to him, with Ine telling her, "I will never let you have my man." Well, she had someone she liked too, so the girl was kind enough to withdraw gracefully. Hearing all this, Mino decided to ask Ine if she could think of her as a love rival and reenact that moment, and this somehow put a sparkle around Shouzou. So, Ine had no choice. She grabbed Mino's face and spoke those same words on that fateful encounter, making the granddaughter and grandfather gush over Ine. And I gush at you liking this video and subscribing to my channel, because here at my Shoujo Weekly, I got plenty of fun anime I just want to share with you. So come on, get on my side, hit that subscribe. We see some boys making their way through the Saitou family's apple farm. They discuss how boring farm work would be, and the desire to get rich and live in the city and get themselves some girlfriends. However, their minds changed quite a bit, seeing the beautiful Ine working, as they remembered a much older couple tending to the apple farm. A simple smile from her seems to be enough to get them looking bright red, and seeing her off, they now reconsider the farm life. Previously, Ine was looking to throw this pamphlet away,
but seeing the beautiful dresses on it, her heart yearned to wear them, which is something Shouzou picked up on, because when they turned young, he one day brought a small package for her home, and Ine began to blush at the dress that was inside for her. Shouzou is a conservative man when it comes to affection, so he tells her he didn't do anything, but this doesn't stop his enamored wife from getting close and embracing him. Later, the Saitou couple watches a drama that Mino suggested to them, where the young male lead does a kabe-don and goes in for a kiss. However, this only gives Shouzou the impression that young people are too much into radical love gestures. He thinks actions like these are far too much. But it seems Ine is completely lost and can't stop looking at the show. She then begs her husband for one thing, a spicy kabe-don on her. However, despite Shouzou's gleaming performance, Ine tells him she doesn't feel anything from this, since they've been together for so long, making Shouzou scoff it off, believing that's just how the youngins like to show off. But secretly, Ine's heart was going to explode from how hot it was. In the evening, Mino opens the door to one of her grandparents' friends, but the granny's country accent is so thick she can't understand. She asks Ine for help, and to no one's surprise, Ine can conversate with the granny just fine. And now, we're introduced to Shiori, the daughter of the Saitou couple's second son, Takahiro. Ine assures her son that Shiori will be just fine with them. She had apparently gotten into a quarrel with her father and ran away to their residence, but of course was surprised to find her grandma Ine young again. She's going through the typical coming-of-age struggles. Shiori had studied really hard in school to please her parents, and when asked what career path she had decided, she lashed out at her father because she didn't want to follow his footsteps into medicine. She felt alone, she felt like she had no one, felt like an idiot for trying. However, Ine comforted her teary-eyed granddaughter. We flash back to when Ine had asked her what she wanted to be in the future, to which Shiori responded with glee that she wanted to become a doctor to help keep her grandmother Ine in good health. Despite the immense amount of pressure Shiori felt as she got older, Ine told Shiori she'd always be her irreplaceable grandkid. Even in their earlier days, it seems Ine was quite sickly often, even having to forego planned vacations because of it. Her husband refused to go without her, as he wanted to see her in a swimsuit to show it off to the guys. My man. Looking at a swimsuit magazine, Ine thought the youngins exposed their skin far too much. However, she wondered what she should wear to please her beloved. She thinks he's a pervert, so of course he'd want to see a lot of her skin. But maybe she should just wear the dress he bought for her to the beach to be more modest. However, Shiori told her not to overthink it. Sometime later, Ine stares at her glasses as it seems she doesn't need them anymore. Guess her eyes turned young too. She can even clearly see all the days of the week of the calendar from here, and the small writing of the newspaper Mino's holding from a distance. With Shouzou entering in, Mino mischievously tricks Ine to read the letters on the newspaper spelling Grandpa Lovely, embarrassing the couple, with Mino claiming they were flirting in front of their grandkid. So, Ine punished Mino the same way, nearly making her spell out who her crush is. Later, watching another romance drama like you find on my channel, click the playlist in the description for more, Mino asks her grandparents if they'd ever held hands in public on a date, to which Ine says no, they'd never do anything to show off like that. Shouzou adds that getting older, holding hands is more like a walking aid, something Mino finds so unromantic. Coming back from a cold, windy trip to a local grocery store, Shouzou wonders why his wife isn't wearing a glove on one hand in this weather. Oh man, she wants him to catch her hidden desire to hold hands. Shouzou knows that if he holds Ine's hand now, he'd be agreeing with Mino's sentiment on PDA and he'd feel defeated. Despite this, he signals for her to grab, and the couple walks home having lost to Mino again. At their son Takehiro's workplace, he is shocked to find his parents, the Saitou couple, young once again. In his office, he starts by examining his mother to find her breathing more stable than before, and her rapid pulse slowed down. He wonders how they could have possibly turned young again. In Takehiro's younger days, the doctor examining his mother found cancer in her liver. He studied hard to be a doctor in order to save Ine, but he ultimately had to refer her to another doctor who was more appropriate. As he studied, he felt helpless seeing her weaken every day. Regardless, Ine always treated him with love and care. After his parents left the office, Takehiro wept in joy, even though he wasn't the one able to save her. With his parents being youthful and in good health, he felt redeemed. We turn back to the Saitou couple's younger days tending to their apple farm, where one day, a typhoon struck, and in the aftermath, they had to patch up the special tree they planted after they'd gotten married. The day they discovered the golden fruit on it, they chopped some of the apples to enjoy, even though Shouzou felt the golden skin probably should be put on an altar with all of its glamour. However, Ine felt compelled to eat the fruit. After eating it, Ine found the sands of time had reversed on her, a dream that both of them seemed to have. On the day of their 58th marriage anniversary, Ine asked if there's anything special her husband wanted to eat. Despite telling her no, the usual would do, Ine secretly made red rice for them last night. Only, she was surprised to find 2 cakes Shouzou secretly had made for them to celebrate the occasion as well. The two had a scuffle over trying to surprise each other, making Ine ask why she was stuck with such a liar husband. She wondered if he did the same to Mino, to which he softly responded, not with his kids or grandkids. She's the only one so special that he'd lie just to spoil her with his love. A love that the couple enjoyed as they ate together for their anniversary. It's a relaxing day of cleaning for the Saitou couple. The two discuss Ine's short time attending an all-female high school in Tokyo. Sadly, she ended up stranded on the roadside after the war and came back to the countryside. She wasn't a fan of getting muddy working the farm life, but after meeting Shouzou, she realized getting dirty wasn't so bad after all. Later, Shiori brings a PlayStation over, something that the elderly couple doesn't understand so well. The only games Shouzou knows are Menko, Begoma, and Tag, so seeing the on-screen Resident Patty 3 was a shock for him. The two take the game a little too literally, not understanding repeating NPC dialogue or that looting items in the game isn't a criminal offense. Shiori couldn't help but feel her grandparents were having a hard time, but soon, they get the hang of things, delivering headshots to the zombies and chainsawing them apart as a team. A few days later, they even got all of the trophies. Mino eventually makes it to the house and Shiori seems pretty nervous with her arrival, but she can't stop Mino's affectionate love for her. Mino wonders why Shiori is being so harsh, trying to shove her off, considering they used to play together all the time. Despite Shiori saying that was all in the past, Mino brings up the fact that Shiori always loved their grandpa and grandma. That's why she's here now. However, with Shiori being rebellious, she remarks she doesn't. And oh man, she said it right in front of Shouzou, and he's not taking it so well. But Shiori owns up to it, saying it was just a figure of speech and she doesn't want her grandpa to hate her, cheering Shouzou right up. In a dream, Shouzou meets with the sands of time again. He reflects on the fact that he and his wife have been enjoying their time being young again. There's a lot he still wants to do for her, like their honeymoon trip to Atami. Then suddenly, the hourglass flips. Shaking Ine awake, she's surprised to see Shouzou old again. He doesn't feel sick or anything, but he's a little sad, believing Ine prefers his more youthful form, saying the two of them together now is like chalk and cheese. However, she reassures her beloved he's misunderstood her. She didn't fall in love with him being young or old. She fell in love with the only Shouzou Saitou in the world. To her, nothing's changed between them. He realizes she's right. He began to think getting older again was bad, but that would be disrespectful to the life they walked through together. He promises that they'll still go on their vacation, just like this, and seeing his eyes of determination, Ine feels the spark from the man she loves. At Takehiro's office, it seems Shouzou retained a lot of his muscle from his youthful form, yet his son reports Shouzou's kidney and liver are showing signs of aging, so he shouldn't overwork himself. Between just Ine and Takehiro, there are still other good things to report though, like Shouzou's body function seems to recover more than before he turned young. However, Takehiro worried more about Ine, considering she had the body of a healthy person in their 20s. He wonders how much longer she'll live. She doesn't fear her own death much, but at this rate, Shouzou will most likely be the first to go. If she were to live another 70 years, her entire family would be gone by then. She doesn't want to die alone. Mino's side of the family is shocked to see Shouzou went back to being older. He still feels pretty young, so he's ready to test himself in arm wrestling against his son. Yoshiaki then tells Shouzou if he wins, for the Atami vacation, he'll get them an open air bath, giving Shouzou a lot to imagine. Yoshiaki had planned on holding back a little. However, he wasn't ready for his father to be so fired up, he'd get instantly slammed. Since turning older, shopping around with Ine, Shozo doesn't feel so good about how people look at them. A store clerk comes by, asking if he's looking for a present for his granddaughter. Feeling embarrassed, he almost goes along with it, but Ine stopped him, proudly saying this man is her husband. She understands why Shozo would want to lie, but she doesn't want to be anything to him but his wife. Ine's favorite snack is mame daifuku, a rice cake filled with red bean. Since they turned young again, they've eaten a lot of them together, but lately, she stopped eating them in front of Shozo. With him being old again, he's afraid of getting diabetes, so he's personally not eating them. But he still wants her to enjoy them. With Shozo tucked in bed, Ine begins eating her treats, as she doesn't want him to feel bad since he's back to watching his health, only to find he's right behind her. She gets flustered, saying she wasn't trying to enjoy the mame daifuku behind his back. However, Shozo tells her she's got it wrong. Seeing her happy while eating these is the best medicine for him. So, she munches it right in his hand, and the two enjoy a midnight snack together. After Ine's parents had passed and she lost her home, she went to live with her mother's relatives and work for them. When her father was still alive, he was very wealthy. Since he had acted arrogantly toward her mother's family, Ine's relatives often avoided her. The first issue was her relatives had a thick country accent she couldn't understand, and her speaking the Tokyo dialect made her peculiar to them. She even got made fun of for it. Ine felt so uncomfortable living there, so after she finished work for the day, she'd often spend her time at a local shrine, where one day she met Shozo. While chatting for the first time, her stomach began to rumble. He tried offering her food, but with her being isolated living here, she thought it would be a bad idea with all the rumors of her floating around. However, Shozo didn't know who she was or where she was from. He just didn't want to see her hungry, leaving her with the food while he took off. Shozo would visit the shrine to see Ine after work, day after day. He kept trying to talk with her, despite her trying to push him away. She thought Shozo lacked stability and didn't seem like he attended school properly. She was still curious though, to see if he'd be able to melt her frozen heart. Back to the present day, he definitely melted the whole thing for her. In another one of Shozo's dreams, the hourglass appeared again. He figured if flipping this turned him old, then flipping it again should make him young. However, being young again, Ine didn't seem so surprised with him. She was more concerned they might never age or die, but Shozo calmed her, telling her the sands were flowing out of their hourglasses. No matter what, they'd run out of time at some point. He believes the two of them only had a few years left. He promised Ine she's the one he'd never leave behind, and with her eyes filled with tears, the two embraced, knowing they'd gracefully go together. The two boys from a few episodes ago wander, talking about how Tokyo must have a lot of foreign cars, in comparison to where they live now, as this place only has light cars and trucks. Since this place does get a lot of snow, cars with low height would definitely have problems. And even if they got a sports car, there aren't too many places that could service it here. Ine then spots the boys, asking for their time, and they blush in return. She tells them tomorrow she'll be spraying a lot of pesticides in the area. If they find the smell too bad, they can walk another way home, even though it isn't bad for them. Then Shozo appears in his pesticide-spraying vehicle, which the young boys mistake for a Ferrari. At the Igarashi residence, Grandpa Igarashi had asked for Shota's help cleaning the attic, but why did he have to ask Grandpa Saito for help? The second floor has stuff Grandpa Igarashi's father and grandfather had piled up. Things such as a carved table in a wooden box and scrolls of Yoshitsune's legend. All things Shozo found to be a gold mine. Grandpa Igarashi wants everything thrown away, but stops when it comes to this black long chest, known as a nagamochi. It's most likely a trousseau containing all of Shota's grandma's belongings. Heisuke touched the box, thinking of his beloved Misako. He asked Shota and Shozo to leave him alone while he decided on what to do with it. Outside, Shota had already cleverly planned to call North Town's Board of Education. He wanted them to safekeep all the cultural assets his grandfather had been storing. With everything finished, Heisuke planned to tear down the storage house in the future. His kids decided not to continue the family farm, having built their houses in the city. There's no one here that can really maintain it anymore. He plans to call his demolition buddies to take care of it. Around the back, Shozo asks if Shota plans on living here in the future. He's not sure, but he knows he wants to go to Tokyo to become a soccer athlete. But inheriting his grandfather's things doesn't sound too bad to him. With Heisuke able to hear him, he's shocked. Soccer athlete, office worker, farmer, no matter what job he'd land himself, it's this very land that's brought him this far. Turning his back on the homeland that raised him would feel so wrong, so someday, he'll want to run the farm himself. This brings Heisuke to tears as he tells his buddy the storage room teardown is off, and the two grandfathers bond in tears over Shota. In the local university library, which is open to the public on weekends, Shiori thought she'd study for the exams like a uni student. That was the plan, however. She lacked the motivation. She remembered saying something terrible to her grandfather when they were talking about studying. She told him there was no way he could teach her since he didn't even go to high school. Looking over, she then noticed Shozo was here as well. Astonished to find him here, she calmed herself, pretending not to see him. But now she really can't focus. She begins to spy on him and sees he has high school textbooks, which seemed to trouble him. Shiori then remembered her grandmother mentioning her grandfather not going to school, not for a lack of wanting to, but because he couldn't. She wondered if he would actually be an intelligent student if the times allowed it. Seeing him gave her motivation, so she got to work. And later, at Shozo's place, Shiori thanked him as she was able to get single-digit rank in the midterm exams. In Mino's class, she overhears two of her classmates talk about the hot couple from Southtown. They ask Mino if she knows anything about them, but she denies even hearing about them, making an excuse to head home. Getting some dessert with Shota. Ooh. She knows no one would believe the couple are her grandparents anyways. However, Shota tells her she doesn't need to think so deeply about this. Mino thanks him for the advice, and for also helping her study. She also mentions her grandfather has been talking very highly of him lately, and wonders what he's done to deserve such praise. She then asks if he adores couples like her grandparents, to which he nervously answers, they're probably the ideal couple. While he heads to the bathroom, Mino thinks of how her grandpa keeps mentioning Shota's so great and wants him as his grandson. She knows he's already approved of Shota. And in the bathroom, Shota's a nervous wreck, telling himself over and over they're just having a study session, not a date. At the Saitou residence, Mino brought flyers to explain her school is having a cultural festival, with her classroom hosting a cafe. Ine is stoked to go to school with her husband. She couldn't bear going without it. We arrive at the North Town High Festival, where Shozo hasn't been since the last major typhoon. Back then, they couldn't even visit the school grounds peacefully. Ine is really frolicking around like a kid until she gets surrounded by students trying to sell her things. One student in particular accidentally spills juice on Ine, so they offer to prepare her a change of clothes in the sewing club. Waiting for her to finish changing, Shozo thought back to how Ine mentioned she had gotten many interviews for marriage, from the son of a lord's family to a coal mine company president. A lot of them talked to her father. In high school, she loved music, having played the koto, shamisen, and piano. He wished he could have heard her play himself. Learning Ine was ready to be seen, he was surprised to see her in a school uniform. Eating lunch together, wearing the uniform has strangely made Ine revert to her prim and proper form as a student from Tokyo. Shozo even notices her eyes are the same way as they were back when she was young and pretentious. He decided he wanted to tease her a bit, and asked if there was anyone she liked, and she coldly answered, no. She has no interest in men. Oh, this is bad. Is she gonna be like this the whole day? However, Ine giggled as this was all just an act. But if she doesn't like anyone, maybe he has a chance at her. She knows 70 years ago, one man had the same idea when he approached her. Turns out, Shozo was the one who got teased this time. In Mino's class, the couple enjoyed their maid cafe, but they're having a bad time getting customers since Class 3-3 is having an authentic ramen shop with the help of a guardian, so customers are lining up there. Even with the main cast being students, Shozo finds the help of an adult to be unfair. While Mino alone is bringing a lot of boy customers, they need some way to bring in girl customers, and it looks like Shozo is gonna be the answer. Now, Class 3-2 is stealing all the customers. with a lot of old ladies lining up for some reason. They're really enjoying Shouzo's handsome butler service. "Here's your order, my lady." "Sure thing, my lady." The elderly women scream at Shouzo's performance. As the Saito couple look at Northtown's old photos, Ine mentions that if Shouzo had gone here, he'd be in the pictures as well, which embarrasses her as she doesn't want her husband to feel bad for not having attended high school. Shouzo thought back to when he asked his father to let him attend high school. However, his father had told them they didn't have much money, and Shouzo was the eldest son. He needed only to grow apples like his predecessors. His father told him to give up and that he had no other choices. It was all in the past, however. Now Shouzo's glad he didn't have to go to school. After all, if he had gone, he never would have met Ine. When these pictures were taken, it was probably the same time he had met her at the secluded shrine. Him not being in these pictures are proof that he was with her. However, Ine mentions their pictures are being taken now. After the festivities, Shota waited outside the cafe, having wanted to invite Mino for the campfire. But with Ine still there, he found it difficult to approach Mino. Mino mentions to her grandma that she really wants to go to the campfire, but has no dance partner. And looks like Shouzo had been watching along with Shota. Figuring out the situation, Shouzo takes his wife away to give Shota the opportunity to ask Mino. And as the couple drives out, Shota and Mino dance the night away. The sands of time appear before Ine as she thinks about how she felt when wearing the school uniform. She knows she has to go back to her original face for the administration at Town Hall, so a simple spin of the hourglass should be enough. However, she trips, breaking a part of the hourglass handle, and in the morning, the older Shouzo greets her, but notices Ine's hair is black for some reason. Looking at the TV, she weirdly calls it a strange board with a person in it, and that stove is a furnace that already has fire in it. How the fridge is so cold without ice in it. The calendar reads an unfamiliar era, several decades after her era. She doesn't know who Shouzo is referring to as Grandma, but now wonders if he's referring to her, Ine Sasaki. That's her name. With the couple sitting down together, Shouzo asks if Ine really doesn't know who he is. After she replies yes, Shouzo picks up that her memories must have also turned young again too, especially with Ine referring to her last name as her maiden one, Sasaki. It seems her memory has regressed to the time period before the two of them had even met. Ine realizes with the world being nearly a century later, she should have been panicking in this situation. However, with the wedding ring still on her finger, she feels what Shouzo's saying must have some validity. She's certain she must have been the one who proposed to him, given her personality, but wonders why did she fall for him and spend half a century in the world with him. Shouzo wasn't expecting what was to come next. She proposed he make her fall in love with him again. Well, before they begin all the memory processing, Shouzo believes it's a good idea for them to eat first. However, Ine remarks the rice cooker to be a weird apparatus. She tries the rice and is blown away with it being nothing at all like the rice she knows. With a pretentious attitude, she simply tells Shouzo, "I suppose it has a good flavor." But as Shouzo brings out all the leftovers for them to eat, Ine blankly stares, but is glad some customs of this future Japan haven't changed at all, as they say "itadakimasu" before beginning their meal. After eating, the two begin cleaning up, but Shouzo wonders why she kept staring at him. It seems she's not used to seeing the master of the house doing housework. Shouzo responds that his father was the domineering sort. He was a good example of what Shouzo didn't want to become. Shouzo himself also wasn't very good at cooking, so oftentimes he left most of that to Ine, but he does most of everything else. Ine thought of that as commendable, but Shouzo didn't think of it as anything special. After all, she always did orchard work with him as well. Ine thought this era's way of life to be strange, but Shouzo responded it's not like that at all. They've always been this way. They just didn't like things to be unbalanced. With Ine now understanding that this daily life has spanned several decades, she's surprised Shouzo's been doing housework the entire time while not making a show of it or asking for thanks. She blushes from it, still looking away from him so it's hard to see. At night, before they're about to go to bed, Shouzo tells her he'll use the hourglass to turn young again, something Ine doesn't quite understand, until she sees his youthful, handsome form in the morning. She didn't see an hourglass in her dreams, but she was more fixated on if this guy was actually Shouzo. This does affirm though that this Ine is from a time before she had met Shouzou, as she doesn't recognize this form either. Most unfortunate for our guy. She found it all to be strange. She didn't have any memory of his voice or appearance. But why is it seeing him from behind looking sad that she wished he would share some of that pain with her? She clenched at her chest, wishing to share in his sadness so strongly. Looking through their family album, Ine was surprised to see her son Yoshiaki's family. With Shouzou bragging about how great they were, Ine put on a false smile. She knows if they learned she'd lost her memory, she's sure they'd be in shock. So of course, they'd have the worst timing with Mino shouting she's come to visit. Oh man, Shouzou forgot Yoshiaki's family was coming to visit today. Ine reacts to this quickly, saying she'll pretend to be like grandma for today. However, Shouzou wonders how his wife will get past her memories and missing accent. But she tells him to figure out how to cover for her. Even not knowing about her family, Ine knows she still has a personal duty as a mother, and her duty right now is to not make her children sad. The first thing Mino noticed was Ine's hair now being black. However, Ine put on her best acting skills, welcoming her in. She tries using a country accent with her son, but it isn't going too well. So Shouzou makes the excuse that with them having visited Mino's school festival the other day, Ine being reminded of her own school days made her want to use her old accent. Mino found it strange, as she was used to her grandmother always using polite grammar, but Mino still thought how Ine was speaking now to be new and cool. With Mino talking at her, Ine thought more about the granddaughter staring at her. Mino seemed like a girl who really cared about her grandparents. She wondered what this heartfelt feeling was inside of herself. She then suddenly grabbed onto Mino and held her close, thinking she was so cute. Ine stared at an array of ingredients, surprised to learn they'd make a rice curry. She then began viciously chopping, prompting Yoshiaki to ask if everything was alright. Shouzou assured him things were fine, and is now wondering if his wife had forgotten how to cook too, only for Ine to respond her servants were the ones who usually cooked. This must mean her mind was brought back to before the farm life. Ine gets a little annoyed, thinking Shouzou is mocking her in his heart for being hopeless at cooking, but he assures her that's not the case. He knows she's just trying to make their sons not worry. She then has him teach her, and with them cutting together, Ine feels that standing in the kitchen feels somewhat nostalgic. The leftovers she ate yesterday were apparently ones she had made previously, and they were delicious. She wonders what could have pushed her to become a good cook. But cutting together with him, she began to understand it had to be Shouzou's fault. Eating the curry, Mino felt the potatoes were cut a little big today. However, Shouzou denied it, saying she was just imagining things. We turn back to Yoshiaki's past, where his parents would often praise him for his hard work. Unfortunately, his boss right now didn't believe his hard work was enough. He needed to also produce results. With Mino knocked out in the evening, Shouzou is shocked to hear Yoshiaki's company may go out of business if they keep going under. Population declines are causing branch stores to fold as well. He's really expecting his company to not last much longer. Shouzou offers for him to work at his apple farm if things really go under, but Yoshiaki declines, not wanting to trouble his parents. He plans on pushing himself further. He thinks he needs to work harder than he's ever worked. However, Ine responds by telling him he shouldn't work any harder than he already is. She believes there are people above him taking advantage of his hard work and kindness, and because of this, his situation will never change. Getting back on his feet is more than enough, so she assures him he can come to his parents anytime. With Yoshiaki's grievances aired out, and himself now totally drunk, he asks Ine if she's really his mother. Ine gasps, wondering if she's been caught, especially hearing him say she's like his mom, but also doesn't seem like it. He feels the air about her and the look in her eyes is different, but she looks the same as when he was a kid. However, with her patting his head, it really did remind him of his childhood. Seems she was no match at fooling her own child. The next day, Shouzou takes Ine out to the shrine she confessed to him at. This doesn't help bring back any of her memories, but she wonders if reenacting the situation from back then might. The two sit together, and Ine learns she was the one who touched Shouzou's hand. If he's lying, she won't hold herself responsible for this failing, but she wants to put in genuine effort in remembering. Reaching out for his hand, the two get totally nervous, and she finds this totally stupid that she did this before. She then scoots away, feeling itchy all over. At the hospital, they decide to visit Ine's older sister, Suru, who used to let Ine sleep in her bed during the scary thunder in their childhood. She's much older now though, and not too responsive. Ine found the flow of time to be cruel. When she heard her sister was still alive, she came running, but she never imagined their mother was the only one that Suru remembered. She felt the only one that her current self could turn to for comfort is no longer alive. She then turned over to Shouzou, noting he simply sat quietly by her side, not saying a word. She wondered if this was his way of saying she isn't alone. She felt there was no need for him to be so considerate of her feelings. Even if she was alone, she felt she'd be fine. But she felt she had to grab his shirt. And although this was supposed to be a serious moment, Shouzou felt like he wanted to use the restroom, but now would be bad timing. They then brought Suru to a piano, because she was apparently incredibly good at playing in her youth. Suru actually sits in front of the piano all the time, never touching the keys, just sitting there. Ine then sat beside her and began playing. Remembering when Suru had told her she'd match any song Ine wanted to play, Ine kept playing, knowing at this moment, Suru didn't remember her or the place they grew up. However, Suru's eyes began to open, and Ine was shocked to see her big sister playing right beside her and singing the song. Suru still couldn't remember who Ine was, but she knows a good piano player when she hears it. This brought Ine and everyone to tears seeing this beautiful moment. At home, Ine was by herself for the night because Shouzou had to attend the Southtown Association meeting. As she ate her dinner, she reflected on how it's been several weeks, yet her memory still hasn't returned. At the moment, she saw no signs of falling in love with Shouzou, and also felt he hadn't proactively approached her in a romantic manner either. Being left alone and amnesic didn't make her feel any better about him. Also, the curry he made didn't taste so delicious either. Another mark against him. She wonders if he realizes she feels anxious about everything with him not around. Even learning the basics of everyday life here, she doesn't feel she should be so anxious, and yet she is. There isn't a need for Shouzou to return home so quickly, but she found herself wishing for it. Is it simply his presence by her side that has merit in and of itself? The memory of Shouzou telling her she's the one he'd never leave behind suddenly restored her hourglass. She remembered confessing her feelings to him when she was 16. It was half in jest, but Shouzou had visited her at the shrine every day. The relatives she was staying with were on bad terms with his family, so she was forbidden from seeing him. To see her again, he bowed and pleaded, and after seeing him again after all that time of separation, she was shocked to see a large bruise on his face he had gotten from fighting with his father. After that, Ine fell seriously ill and collapsed. Shouzou took care of her and her treatment fees. Lying in her hospital bed, she felt them being together was no good. She'd only bring him unhappiness. But to him, it didn't matter how many unreasonable things came their way. He loved her with all his heart. He told her even if tens of thousands of unhappiness came raining down on them, he'd just need to give her enough happiness to outnumber it all. And he swore to do it, even if it meant devoting his whole life to it. With them aging together, she knew Shouzou had kept his promise. With Shouzou finally returning home, Ine began running, sick of herself for telling him to make her fall in love with him again. With him, no matter how many times she'd lose her memories, it would always turn out the same. She teared up, calling out to him as she jumped in his arms. The next day, the couple sat at the same shrine, with Ine asking how Shouzou was able to stay so calm through all this. He simply responded that Ine from back then and the Ine now are important to him. It didn't matter if she couldn't remember him. With their fingers touching, the two lovebirds were back in full form. At the Saitou grandparents' household, the couple is planning their vacation to Tokyo. They're considering getting a sleeper train to play cards and drink alcohol in. However, Shota bursts their bubble, telling them sleeper trains don't exist anymore. With the bullet train, they can now travel from their location to Tokyo in under 3 hours. However, the elderly couple thinks back to their old days when it used to take 8. Shota wonders if he should be giving suggestions for their honeymoon trip, but Mino says it's fine since he's used to going to Tokyo for soccer club expeditions. The couple does have their eldest daughter and her family that live in Tokyo, but she's usually busy these days with work. Shouzou then says he'd love to have someone show them around the city, and everyone is looking towards Shota. Mino will tag along if he goes, and Ine loves the idea of their grandchildren coming with them during their honeymoon. Shota then tells them to wait a minute. He's not even their grandson. So this is when Shouzou whispers to him that if he comes along, he can go on a date with Mino. Of course, Shota tries to get permission from his grandfather, but with Heisuke not liking Shouzou, he slams the idea on the ground. However, Mino appears, introducing herself as Shota's classmate and Shozo's granddaughter, who will be coming with them on the trip. She tells them she'd love for Shota to come with them, because he'd be really helpful. And seeing Shota staring at her, Heisuke is excited his grandson brought a bride home. And even though it embarrasses Shota, Heisuke leaves him in their care. Shopping for the train travel, Ine buys some sweet potatoes from a longtime local store owner. However, the business hasn't been going so well, so Ine decided to eat outside, and with her beauty, she attracted the eyes of so many potential customers. The shop then became flooded with business. 60 years ago, in Aomori Station, Shozo said goodbye to another friend. Waving goodbye, he thought to himself he was always the one sending someone else off. He thought Tokyo just wasn't for him, but truthfully, he always wanted to go. So Ino woke him up from his daydream. He was just looking forward to their trip. As Yoshiaki says goodbye to the kids, he's definitely more wary of Shota. Elsewhere, Shozo admits he hadn't left the town of Aomori since the day he was born. Ine felt bad, thinking all the times she'd been sick may have contributed to that. But Shozo could never think badly of his lovely wife. As she took his hand to escort him inside, the kids stopped them because that train leads to Hokkaido. Inside the bullet train, the elderly couple is surprised to see it go so fast, as Shota and Mino enjoyed snacks. Mino commented on how they're not using their young faces today, so Shozo answers it's because they have discounts for seniors. Smart. They don't want to be suspected for looking young. The two then take a quick nap and restore their youthful forms. We turn to Akemi Saito, their daughter, who hears from Yoshiaki that their parents have become young again. She doesn't quite believe this, especially remembering her mother's weak body. Unfortunately for Akemi though, she got a cold the day her parents were visiting. She remembered at times like these, her mother would always make porridge for her. Her mother was always kind, but when she stayed home with the cold, she was even kinder then. The days spent together felt like heaven to her. With Ine arriving and holding her forehead, Akemi thought she was starting to see illusions of her mother from the past. But when Ine greeted her, Akemi began panicking at the sight of her youthful mother. After a whole hour of explaining their situation, Ine apologized for visiting even though Akemi is sick. The elderly couple began chatting about their experiences here, and Shozo remarked the vast difference in culture between here and the countryside. He can hardly believe this is still part of Japan. Akemi has quite a large family here apparently, with one daughter and two sons. While her son Shunsuke is still in high school, the other two siblings already have families. Then, little Kosuke came to play, knowing his great-grandparents were visiting, and with them witnessing how similar Shozo looked compared to his grandson Shinji, Kosuke mistaked him for a doppelganger of his dad. The next day, Akemi's entire side of the family was informed of the situation, and while Mino and Shota went to Shinjuku, Shozo and Ine went to Sugamo, happily enjoying all the shops for the elderly. The two actually split up for a bit to shop for their own things, until Ine was surprised to find Shozo posing for all the ladies. Their next stop was at the Milo Cafe and Restaurant, which Shozo had reservations at. Ine and Mino glowed at the sight of a beautiful parfait, and although Ino was a little concerned about the price, Shozo told her not to mind it just this time. After a single bite, Ine quickly ate up the whole thing, a sight Shozo really enjoyed. Then, they went to a photo booth, where the elderly couple posed far too formally. Mino decided she'd show them how to take pictures properly, so she and Shota came out with a nice set, making Shota really glad he came out to Tokyo with them. The Saito couple then tried again, and despite Mino's tips, they could only come up with writing "yay" on their photo sets. Back at Akemi's place, Shozo bought some tops as gifts for Kosuke. However, little Kosuke threw a tantrum, as this was not what he was looking for at all. So, Shunsuke instead showed off the bootleg Beyblades, which were what Kosuke really wanted. Shozo then challenged Kosuke to a battle, where if Kosuke won, Shozo would buy him his favorite toy. Shunsuke wasn't confident in Shozo's top winning out against a modern Beyblade. However, with Shozo's immense rip force, he easily knocked his great-grandson's Beyblade out of the arena. With Kosuke crying, Ine certainly wasn't too happy. That night, as Akemi and Ine washed the dishes together, Akemi thought back to her brother Yoshiaki telling her their mother had collapsed and was hospitalized again. Akemi then admitted that she wondered when she had gotten married and moved away if Ine thought she had abandoned them. Akemi always thought about how the rest of the family was doing. She always wondered if her mother was doing okay while being sick, but hated herself for never doing anything for them. With Akemi crying in her mother's arms, Ine comforted her the same way she always had. She told Akemi she was fine as long as Akemi was, and even with them apart, they'd always be together. With everyone gone, Shiori came to visit her grandparents' house, looking for a private place to study. With her entering in, she imagined remnants of her elderly grandparents always greeting her and congratulating her on her exam scores. She only started to visit more because she wasn't so comfortable at home. She had some fears that one day, her time with her grandparents would eventually come to an end. In a few years, she'll be an adult, have a family of her own, and no one would ever spoil her again. And by then, maybe her dear grandparents wouldn't be around any longer. She knew she was always overthinking when she was alone, a terrible habit. But regardless, she wanted them to come back soon, which, surprisingly, Shouzou and Ine could feel telepathically, so they began their travels back. Just kidding, they've made it to the city of Atami for their real vacation spot. With Shouzou and Ine crying their eyes out over the joy they're experiencing together, they're greeted at the Izumo Inn, where they settle down in their big guest rooms. Observing the open-air bath, Shouzou continuously hints his wife to join in with him. However, Ine just ignores him, offering to share the bath only with Mino instead, making Shouzou depressed. But with the kids out of the room, Ine hints to meet her there when the kids are asleep. So, he sits in the cold bath for a long time. Even with Shota telling him he'll get sick, he's determined to keep himself cool for tonight. They sit at the dinner table observing luxurious food. And for some reason, Shouzou is frozen with a weird look on his face. When they eat, the Saitou couple cries in joy before Ine pours Shouzou sake for the occasion. Shota starts feeling a little down, however. It's just that looking at the meal made him wonder if it really was alright for him to eat. He knows it's the Saitou couple's honeymoon, but feels bad that the men and women are sleeping in separate rooms. He blames himself as part of the cause. However, Mino tells him she's really glad he came. She felt like Shinjuku would have been scary if she had come alone. Even when strangers there tried to talk to her a few times, thanks to him, she was able to relax and enjoy herself. Even Ine thanks Shota for his guidance. That night, Mino wished Shota good night. He was completely flush, however, as he never imagined he'd end up sleeping in the same room as her. It happened this way when Mino said it'd be weird for her grandma and grandpa not to sleep together for their honeymoon, and Ine responded the two would probably be fine. As the two kids lay in their beds, Mino tells him to keep this a secret, because if her dad found out, he'd kill them. They then talk about how Shouzou and Ine had been subtly flirting all the way here, and Mino wondered what would happen if her grandparents suddenly had another baby. She wanted Shota to call her Grandma for a try. This certainly surprised him, but Mino really wanted to try feeling what her grandma feels, to see what it's like. So, with Shota's best impression, he says, "Grandma, is dinner ready yet?" Which made Mino giggle, because his impression was good, unlike mine. So they role-played back and forth, like the couple who's been together for the last 70 years. Mino then wants to try calling each other by first names, since her grandparents also sometimes do that. Blushing red, Shota utters her name, something that certainly takes Mino aback. So, instead of saying his back, she nervously says it's time for bed. In the Saitou couple's room, however, Shouzou had been knocked out for quite a bit. Ine is a little annoyed, since she spent all day trying to mentally prepare herself for the open-air bath with him. But, in his dreams, he gets to be as pervy as he wants, only to accidentally flip his hourglass. The next morning, Ino wakes him up since the couple is scheduled to visit the ocean, but she isn't so pleased to see him in his elderly form. At the beach, Ine's beauty was like a snow-white canvas. All eyes on that beach were focused on a single point, but the people's gazes were stolen by the person behind her, because behind the transcendent beauty was the super jacked elderly Shouzou. Sitting under a beach umbrella, Ine remarks she isn't fit for swimming, and that collecting seashells is more than enough for her. Looking at Mino, Ine sheds a tear at how grown her granddaughter has become. However, in the water, Shouzou is making a scene swimming intensely against Shota. Defeating the young boy, Shouzou flexes on him as Shota still has a long way to go. While the kids play in the water, Shouzou couldn't help but feel Ine's swimsuit she bought is going to waste. Ine didn't mind relaxing in the shade though. Besides, on the inside, she knows she's an old lady over 80. But Shozo is such a sweet guy. He thinks even in her elderly form, the bikini would suit her. And seeing all the other couples on the beach, he gets depressed, wanting to show off his beautiful lady too. Ine thinks back to all the times she was bedridden. Back then, going seaside with her family and relaxing on the beach was nothing more than a pipe dream. Being like this right now, just the two of them together, makes her happier than she's ever been. She goes to wash off the sand on her legs, and in the shower, she thinks there's no way she could show her body off like this. It'd be too embarrassing. Back at the beach, even with Shozo begging her to show off her swimsuit, Ine just couldn't do it. She reminds him he's seen her naked countless times already. But hey, this is different. I'm not gonna explain it. Ine then adds she doesn't want any men other than him to see it anyways. By the dock, Mino seems a little down, but won't explain herself to Shota. With Shota now helping put away the beach stuff, Mino stares at some wedding traditions that make her even more aware of her feelings for Shota. Back at the inn, Shota and Mino are a little disappointed that they can only seem to rally for 20 hits. Mino then offers her grandparents a try, and they astonish a whole crowd, rallying at a breakneck pace for over 10 minutes at ping pong. And even beyond then, how long could they possibly keep going? At night though, they finally made it to the open air bath together. Ine is totally relaxed, but Shozo is a little nervous, especially being in his geezer form. They then reminisced on the day they first turned young again and Shozo had asked her out on another honeymoon. Ine was sure glad they lived long lives together. It embarrassed her to imagine them as an elderly couple trembling as they flirted in a bath, and knowing their sands of time would eventually come to an end, Shozo desired to be with his wife as much as possible. The next day, at the shrine near the inn, Shozo was nervously picking out Emma tablets to write his wish on, but fled with his wife finding him. Then, the kids had their turn to write their wishes. Shota wished to play in the National Soccer League, but when turning to Mino, she frantically tells him she didn't wish for anything important, and shows him her wish was to get good grades on her tests, since she's pretty bad at studies. However, on the side that's facing her, she really wrote, "I hope I can come back to Atami with the person I like." Observing Shozo's wish, Ine reads his wish for the safety and health of his family, but she felt there had to be more to this, and froze seeing what was written on the other side. Mino suddenly showed up to ask what was wrong. However, Ine denied anything, but, looking at it over by herself again, Ine read his true wish. Shozo had written, "I hope that in my next life, I can be Grandma's husband again." They then make their way to a magnificent Kusunoki tree nearby that's been around for over 2,000 years. Legend has it that for every time you circle this holy tree, your life grows longer by 1 year. So now, the Saitou couple is fired up for 100 laps. Mino then intensely stares at Shota, as she wants her wish granted with a few laps around as well. As they walked, he hoped the next time they walked around it together, that he'd be her special someone, not just a friend. Their hands then accidentally touched, making their hearts beat rapidly. It looks like the Saitou couple was close behind them, Ine shakily praying for great-grandchildren, and Shozo losing his mind hoping Shota would go for it. Later that night, they prayed at the tree. Mino heard Shota's wish of coming back to their hometown after he was done playing professional soccer. After he passed out, Mino thought of him as really impressive. She never imagined him to have thought about his future so seriously, especially because she hadn't thought of hers at all. She thought back to her grandparents, and was even somewhat jealous of them. She then walked towards Shota, apologizing for only leaving one kiss on his forehead while he slept. We turned back to a younger Shozo, pissed that his dead father had left their family in so much debt. He was so upset he'd have to pay it all back. He apologized to Ine, as he had no choice but to put off their honeymoon for the time being. With her being a loving wife, she accepted with ease, certain they'd find a way to get through this somehow. So, he promised he'd take her on a honeymoon one day. They'd get her illness healed, and he'd work to make them tons of money. But, in the end, they couldn't save up the money until their children were already grown, and her illness never did get cured. It took a long time, but Shozo finally succeeded in keeping his promise. With Ine reaching to hold his hand under the jacket, she thanked Shozo from the bottom of her heart, making the kids jealous, wishing they could hold hands too. In the library, Shiori finds and gives back a library card to a boy named Satoshi. He's apparently studying legends about people turning young again. The two sit beside each other, and we learn Satoshi is a second-year student in the medical department, the same department she's trying to get into. She points at his book, thinking of her own grandparents, and Satoshi explains that since ancient times, there have been stories in this region of elderly people turning young. It apparently happens every few hundred years, and he's doing research on it as he suspects there will be someone new who turns young again sometime soon, not knowing it's Shiori's grandparents. As they conversate, Satoshi learns Shiori chose the medical department because her dad's a doctor, but her bigger reason is the example her grandparents had set. They're kind people who, no matter how much they've suffered, they always wished for others' happiness first. She felt saved by them so many times in her life, so now she wants to be the one who saves them. She still hasn't told them yet because she finds it a little embarrassing. However, Grandpa Shozo had been eavesdropping the entire time and is now in tears of happiness. So showing up at their place, the grandparents coddle her and she has no idea why. At the Saitou residence, Yoshiaki is a little suspicious of his daughter Mino, who's been coming home late lately, and whenever he brings up the topic, she always avoids it. But the grandparents already know the reason. Yoshiaki is having bad thoughts though, suspecting she's hanging out with some religious cult or bad men behind his back. He then imagines his daughter calling him gross and to stay away from him, and he begins screaming that his pure, sweet daughter won't be the same anymore. He then goes on about how the internet gives young people access to far too much information than he had growing up, which is true by the way. That's how you can watch your boy ComfyTea. Subscribe. Ine then again reassures him Mino is probably well behaved, and reminds Yoshiaki he was much more of a delinquent in his youth. He even met his wife while being treated after a fight. On another day of tending to their apple farm, the two boys coming back from school decide to ask the Saitou couple a question. They want to know what happened to the elderly couple who had been tending to the farm since they were in first grade, putting Shouzou and Ine in a minor panic. Shouzou makes the excuse that the couple is just resting because they don't feel well, and Ine adds that they've left everything to them, their relatives. With the boys taking off, the Saitou couple gushes at the sweetness of their concern, and Ine wants to give them relief. So, they flip their hourglasses that night and return to their elderly selves to greet the boys the next day. With Mino leaving her grandparents' house, it looks like she forgot the bento Ine prepared. So Ine decides to go after her on a bike. And this is crazy. Ine is biking at the pace of the train to catch up. Studying with Satoshi, Shiori hears him speak with a little country accent. She doesn't really mind it since her grandparents talk the same way, but feels stupid because she's so intensely aware of him these days. It reminded her of when Mino asked if she had a boy she liked, perhaps someone easygoing like their grandpa. Shiori then decides to ask why Satoshi is researching people who turn young again, and turns out his grandparents have turned young just like her grandparents. A gold apple appeared on one of their trees as well, so they ate it and turned young. Meeting the grandparents Hajime and Setsu Takahashi, the grandma asks if Shiori is Satoshi's girlfriend, to which he denies. She's only here because she asked to meet them. Satoshi has been worried about his grandparents for a while, especially since his grandparents divorced. They became like his parents. He's been researching their case so he can take care of them in case anything goes wrong. His love for his grandparents is much like Shiori's. With a bit of trust built, Shiori decided to introduce her grandparents to Satoshi's, and both sets are flabbergasted. But the two couples warm up to each other very easily, too quickly for Shiori perhaps. She then utters to Satoshi, "I wonder if one day we'll be an old married couple like them too," making him blush at the word we. And once she realizes what she had just said, she tries to take it back quickly, saying it was just an example. A long time ago, Setsu had been working and living at an inn, where some drunk men just wouldn't leave her alone, continuously asking for her to dance or pour sake for them. Then, Hajime, who was in the next room, came in to save her, and that's how they started dating. She then snidely remarked there's no husband in the world who's better than hers, so Ine had to counter that her husband was the best. However, Setsu had to counter that her husband was the best, which wasn't the end for Ine because her husband thought of her 24/7. Now, they decided to compete to see whose husband is really number one. And, with the two couples meeting to compete, Ine gives Shouzou a deadly glare because she's determined to win. They first compete in a tug of war, where the first husband to get to their wife wins. With the husband struggling, Ine catches Shouzou first, but she's outside of the circle, so they lose round one to the Takahashi couple. The next challenge? A taste test. where eggs and miso are added to a scallop shell and cooked. The men need to pick out their wife's cooking between the two dishes they eat, and after 2 bites, neither of them can seem to tell the difference. Shozo quickly figured his dishes are both Ine's cooking, so round 2 goes to the Saitou couple. For the third competition, the 2 wives argue over what the best thing for them to compete in is. So Matsunosuke tries to inquire more about what this competition is even about. Is the husband that wins really the best husband? He doesn't feel good about that notion at all. He scolds the 2 of them, saying there is no winner when comparing one love to another. And the 2 husbands agree with the idea that if the person they love is happy, that's more than enough. But turns out his wife was right behind him, falling in love all over again. So the 3 couples have a picnic together where they're all winners. On another day, Shiori asked Ine to teach her how to cook. Teaching Shiori how to make chicken karage, Ine wonders what brought this all about. Shiori made the excuse that on weekends, she spent all day at the library studying and wanted to make bento for lunch. However, Ine remembers Shiori saying she didn't like fatty or fried foods, sending her into a mild panic thinking she'd been caught. But she makes the excuse that she doesn't mind them now. Staring at Shiori, Ine began imagining her as a grown, married woman. However, knowing the length of her sands of time, she realized she'd probably never get to see her beloved granddaughter reach that point. But where that granddaughter would take that love is to the man she wanted to spend most of her time with. Oh my gosh, Shouzou and Ine are watching The Ring. It's my favorite horror movie. Shouzou thinks ghosts coming out of the TV are a bit of a stretch. However, Ine is scared, chanting with prayer beads and pouring salt while covering the TV. Going to sleep? Ine is freaked out just looking at the horrifying shape in the ceiling. Her imagination is too active, so she gets up to curl into Shouzou. The next day, they observe a growing apple tree they had gotten from the Takahashi couple. With Mino remembering her wish to be like her grandparents someday, she asked them for some apple seeds to plant for her birthday. They're surprised to hear she might want to run the farm someday. So together with Shota, they plant the new apple tree. She brings up that her grandparents had also planted an apple tree to commemorate their wedding. And even though Shota doesn't know what the future will bring him, he'd love to come back here together with her someday, with the 2 shyly hinting at the promise of love. Mino's grandparents have been secretly gushing at them. On the day of a festival, Ine is dressed in Akemi's old yukata. Ine intends on going in her normal outfit, but that isn't good enough for Mino, so she calls her mom to get a spare yukata. With Shozo stun-locked seeing his beautiful wife, Mino is taking a lot of pictures. Ine is somewhat embarrassed, but Shozo is of course really enjoying this. Having to socialize with his peers, Shozo does everything he can to get out fast to spend time with his lovely wife, whose heart is aching to see him. Seeing a couple with strawberry candy, he asks if Ine wants one, which she denies, saying she's just happy with the 2 of them walking together. He knows her attitude may come from the fact that in their youth, the adults would always drill the idea in their heads that one cannot afford to be extravagant, and that any desire is an evil one. He doesn't believe that's truly the case anymore, so he keeps poking at her to get one until she finally gives in. They then decide to play a carnival game, where they need to shoot the bear at the same time to get it, and Ine happily carries it on her back. Either one of the 2 people who love each other will die first. One will surely pass away, leaving the other behind. The one left behind, while being crushed by loneliness, will live their remaining lives. This truth is unavoidable, with Ine staring at the hourglass. It informs her there are amount of days left. With Shozo calling out to her, Ine suddenly wakes up. He then realizes he had the same vision she did, knowing he'll be fine for the year, but tells her she doesn't have to say how many days she has remaining if she doesn't want to. Holding him close, she painfully admits her remaining time is 7 days. Shozo acknowledges it, and Ine mentions she can feel death lurking with each passing day. As they held hands, Shozo knew this day would eventually come. He thought he was prepared for this, but still, he wished for a miracle from God. Then suddenly, a beam of light shot above them and a scale appeared. With Ine passed out, the local deity of the shrine speaks to Shozo. It's willing to grant him a wish as a thank you for keeping the shrine clean for all these years. The deity cannot extend Ine's life out of nothing, so Shozo chooses to give Ine half his life and to keep it a secret. Afterwards, Ine woke up in a bit of a panic, remembering a dream where sand kept flowing into her hourglass from somewhere. With the 2 Pinky promising not to worry each other any longer, Shozo is glad they can go when it's time together. And with that, they enjoyed the sparks of the fireworks. 1 week after the festival, Ine was surprised to find herself still alive. She breathed a deep sigh of relief before crying into Shozo's arms, explaining she felt leaving him behind was breaking her heart. He comforted her, just saying it must have been a nightmare, and they should just continue to live the same way they'd always been. Aww. Another sweet ending so far. Subscribe to my channel for more. Also, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.